Obviously, this is something that comes across when you're looking for franchise partners to come in and potentially buy a franchise. But that's a culture that extends beyond into the team and being able to provide value to everyone that walks into any of the locations.
Just changing that around where it's not about me, it's about others. Now, but on the other hand, we do have to have people in our lives that fill us. We just can't have, like, you and I know this term, energy vampires around our life, right? We need to have those other people. Yeah. So how do you feel valued? When do you feel the most valued?
Business is the vehicle that gives you the life that you want. It's not about the business itself. It's about the life that you're going to live, which I think in my world translates to the other people that we have, the relations that we have, everything else around that. But the business is just a vehicle for that.
What gives you a spark to where you have this burning desire in your soul to make a difference? And they go, wow, because that's where we want to find people,
Hey, it is Tanner O'Brien here. Welcome back to another episode of the Ownership Advantage. Today, my conversation is with Brad Barber. He is the co-founder of Cabin Coffee Company, and Brad and his wife Angie started this with just one coffee shop in Clear Lake, Iowa back in 2002. Today, they've got 20 plus franchise locations all across multiple states. Here's what makes this interesting. Brad and the team could have scaled to 100 plus locations by now, but he didn't, and that wasn't on accident. So what we're going to be talking about today is why slower growth might be the smartest move that you've ever considered, how to build a business that's an extension of who you are, and what it really takes to scale culture, not just revenue. So if you've ever wondered whether you're growing a little bit too fast, maybe a little bit too slow, or just trying to figure out what even right means to you, this conversation is for you. Let's get into it. Well, welcome, Brad. I want to start with a question for you today. And this is something that maybe to some may not fully make sense on paper, but I'd love for you to kind of get into it. You've gotten into starting the Cabin Coffee franchise back in 2002. You're at 20 something locations now. Could have been at 100 plus locations, right? Dutch Brothers has done it, Scooters has done it, different things like that. But you're choosing to be very focused with your growth and how that looks for the franchise overall. What do you know that maybe some of the other entrepreneurs on the outside looking in, maybe they don't quite understand yet as to how powerful the approach that you've taken has been?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say first, it's the culture of our company is one that we want to build a deeper and wider foundation to be able to support our existing franchisees. And so I had two experiences in my life. I worked for Helzberg Diamonds for a number of years in Kansas City in their home office. And we would open about 5 to 6 stores a year. And that was very healthy, manageable growth because, as you know, even in this day and age, it's hard to find people that can actually effectively lead their business. It's far and few between. And so when I was with Helzberg, Warren Buffett bought us. And one of the things that attracted Warren to our business, number one, it was very profitable. We had great character and great competence, and we had a great leadership team. And we were intentional about slower, manageable growth. Then I had this great job offer to go to work for Applebee's. Now, in Applebee's and in Helzberg Diamonds, I was over their development construction departments. And so I would go all over the United States, finding locations, opening stores. And So when I went to go to work for Applebee's, we're almost on the verge of our 1,000th store. And we bought a company called Rio Bravo out of Atlanta, and we moved their team to Kansas City. And we were trying to open too many stores at one time. And it was very frantic. It was very chaotic. And the difference between people enjoying their jobs between Hellsberg and Diamonds was like the difference between night and day, because people weren't enjoying the ride near as much when I was with Applebee's. And we bought Rio Bravo. We didn't know a thing about Rio Bravo, and so that was a new learning curve. So we just took on too much at one time, and it was a very heavy load. So when Angie and I decided to open Cabin Coffee, Clear Lake's a beautiful town. It's in north central Iowa. It's like a little oasis for the upper Midwest, where people come and vacation. It's like a little Norman Rockwell town. So when we opened up, we thought that would be a good business, is to open up a Cabin Coffee in Clear Lake. That was our first one. But our dream was not to just open one. Our dream was to open up more. We thought we'd have to open up at least 4 or 5 company-owned stores before we started franchising. Right after we opened up our second store, 2 years and 2 months after our first store in Clear Lake, our second store we put in Mason City, we got our first interest in a franchise. So, life is hectic as it is anyway. And so, again, it's what your culture is. And now, and that's why I said just a minute ago, Tanner, I think it's important to know that that's right for me and my wife. That may not be right for somebody else doing the same thing we do, but we need to stay in our lane. We need to stay where we're comfortable and where our vision is.
Well, it's I've got to bring this to the audience a bit, because I've been fortunate to be around the Cabin franchise for a few years at least now. We've had the opportunity to chat and work together and things like that in the past, and there is something different about the culture that y'all have built within each of the franchisees. Right, walking into any Cabin Coffee, there's a warmth. There's something about it that's different than walking into a Starbucks or something else like that. And I want to just really call that out, because I think it's really important to highlight that as you all have kind of accomplished what you have. But when you look back on that first franchise store, that interest that came in, what drew that first franchisee in as a potential candidate?
I think number one, Angie and I don't mean to brag. I mean, that's people. People will do business with people that they like. Okay, first and foremost, that's it. Secondly, the brand. We have this warm, cozy Northwoods Western atmosphere, and so I think a lot of it, and again, that brand is from the core within you. Our slogan's just be happy and have fun, right? So we got to make it happy and we got to make it fun. And again, it's one of those things where, most everybody carries a heavy load. We don't know where they're at. So when a person comes into Cabin Coffee, we want them to feel precious, important, and valued. Because each person is precious, important, and valued. And so it's a place where they can come in and be authentic, be themselves, and just enjoy the communication, the togetherness, and visit about the things, whether they want to be, things they want to celebrate, things they want to maybe cry about even. All spectrums of life. And there's a lot of things that get accomplished in our Cabin Coffees. People have gotten married in our Cabin Coffees. People have gotten engaged. Several people have gone the last place before they went into hospice. Okay? And so we know we've done our job when we're connecting with those people. It's not it's not just profit, it's people. It's people and profit. And what a joy. Uh, the best thing in the world is to serve somebody. Our parents tell us this all the time. It's better to give than receive, and for sure it is. How good does it make you feel when you serve somebody else? There's not a greater feeling. And also, I think about the other thing. I think about what we look for in a potential franchisee or person that matches in our culture is they have this abundance mindset. That's an attractive, optimistic attitude. They're genuinely interested in people, and they truly have a passion to serve. And this gratitude, living this life, and this is something that we look at, and we don't get it right all the time. And I got to tell you right now, I'm a mess, brother. I am a complete mess. So just know. But there's this sense of, if we can feel somebody out through the process of getting to know them, that they have this grateful attitude. Gratefulness carries. That's probably one of the most powerful things in the world a person can have with that embodied in themselves, because we all can feel like we're victims. But if we have this, can overcome that and just see the good things in our life, then we're going to be better servants to our employees, to our customers, and our community. And we are very community mindset too. So it's all about the people. And yeah.
I want to pull something out that you mentioned there, and I think the word that comes to mind is value. You mentioned providing value to everyone that steps foot into a Cabin Coffee. Obviously, this is something that comes across when you're looking for franchise partners to come in and potentially buy a franchise. But that's a culture that extends beyond into the team, and being able to provide value to everyone that walks into any of the locations. So we had been talking, before today and a little bit offline on this concept of how to provide value, and I would almost say responsibility to provide value as humans.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like. What does that mean to you to provide value to another human being?
Okay. Well, what it means to me is it's not about me. Because when it's about me, I'm miserable. And I think fair to say, are you, Tanner? And I'll answer your question. I'm coming back with you. Okay. When are you the most happy or content? Is it when you're thinking of yourself, or when you're, well, I'll just ask that open-ended question. Yeah.
It's an interesting time that you ask it at this particular moment, because I would actually answer right in line with what we're talking about, but it's when I'm distilling conversations or information down in a way that somebody else can receive it, take it, use it, and it impacts their life in a positive way. Those moments and those conversations are probably the things when I go, this is fun, this is exciting. It's not about what I know or what I don't know or the things that I do, but there's some level of impact that extends beyond me, is probably when that moment is hitting for me.
Yeah. See, I know you, and I know that you pour into people. And I can tell you thoroughly enjoy that. And it's not just about, you really enjoy seeing others be fulfilled. And that's what fills you. I know that about you. I can see it just in your actions. And so, your actions speak a lot louder than words. So I have this in my right in the back here. I have on my back of my office, I have, the more you know about the people you serve, the better you serve the people you know. So, it's like one of those 7 habits of highly effective people that Stephen Covey wrote. It's the one of the rules is seek to understand first others before you're understood.
So how do you instill this in team members? So I think about this from the concept of,
Right.
I don't know. I tend to be of the belief system that most things can be taught. Most skills can be transferred, and
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely think that as humans, most of us do find some level of fulfillment when serving others. Now, that service may look different for each individual person, but how do you bring that out in somebody? So let's take either one of the corporate locations at Cabin, or maybe one of the franchise partners is listening to something like this and they want to get the most out of their team. What has been your experience in helping someone tap into that side of themselves and find the ways that work best for them to be able to provide value to others?
You start out with questions, not by just sharing what you know. So it's digging into them about asking some thought provoking questions that make them work out those areas to want to have that ability to be able to have that servant mindset. And some people just have it naturally. Some people, they have to work really hard at it, and some people just don't get it. They don't, and it's the truth. And but because see, if you're asking these thought provoking questions to an existing franchisee or a potential franchisee, uh, these thought provoking questions about situations they've been in or whatever, and they get that worked out, then the light bulb comes on. They do the work. So I guess what I'm trying to say is make them do the work, not you. So you're the coach, okay? You're not a therapist. You're not a counselor. You're trying to help them propel to move forward in understanding the importance of what you can do to add value, and serve other people. Because that's truly, I mean, I truly, I know this. I know this. That's what we're created to do. We
Mm.
aren't created to be served. We're created to serve.
Is there any moments that kind of stand out in your mind of a time where you've kind of gone through some of those questions with an individual, whether it's directly within the Kevin franchise system or not, but where you've gone through these questions with an individual and you've kind of watched them go through and um, almost those connections are being made, maybe kind of see them kind of light up around these thought provoking questions. Is there a moment that kind of stands out or an example of that you can share with us?
I'm thinking here. We had a situation. It was a barista that I was able to. When I go to our stores, most of the time, I I will say hi to the owner or manager or whatever, but I definitely want to get in touch with our baristas and I want to be able to visit with them, let them know they've been seen, they've been heard, and I will ask the manager or the owner if there's a time where I can sit down and have a latte or a whatever with one of their baristas, just to sit down and visit with them about what we can do better, to serve them. And I had this one barista that was really struggling personally, and she was so blinded by and jaded by her past that she was so, bless her heart, she was a lovely young lady, but very insecure and just couldn't get past of really being friendly, genuinely friendly, and comfortable in her own skin. And so through a process of me just sitting there and just hearing her out on some of her struggles. Now, earlier I said, it's not being a counselor or a mentor, because I'm not, but I am a kind of a coach, right? Just like you're a much better coach than I am. And I mean that you're terrific. And but just letting her vent these frustrations out, and it was more personal stuff that was going on in her life, and then turning that around and asking her a few questions about, how do you want your life to be? What is your vision for your life? If you were to paint me a picture of that. Well, she started painting this picture of how she wanted her life to be more meaningful, and to be seen and felt loved and felt cared for. And so I said, so tell me a situation where you have felt loved before. And so she shared me a situation like that. And I said, so share me a situation in the past where you felt cared for. So, and then where you felt valued and you had meaning in your life. So I asked her those questions, and then she started reflecting back on some of the positive things where she felt loved, cared for, she had meaning, and she felt value. And so I said, well, what is a way that you can do that for others? And so she shared a couple of things with me about what she could do to make people feel, loved and cared for and seen. And I said, well, the more you can do that, the more you're going to feel loved, valued, cared for, and seen. So, and it's just like what we talked about earlier. It's just changing that around where it's not about me, it's about others. Now, but on the other hand, we do have to have people in our lives that fill us. We just can't have, like, you and I know this term, energy vampires around our life, right? We need to have those other people. Yep. Yeah. So how do you feel valued? When do you feel the most valued?
I think it's probably not too dissimilar from really the experience that you just described. Having opportunities to actually connect with people, probably one-to-one in this particular case, and watching those little moments. And I imagine maybe this is something that you saw and you experienced in having, the conversation with this barista, but watching those little moments of things starting to connect or starting to click, that there was something that kind of turned on in their brain. For me, I think that is the moment. Now, sometimes that happens in fast fashion. There's a lot of different things that are happening at once. Sometimes it's, hey, I saw this thing that you did 3 months ago or a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted to let you know that made a difference. I took this, I used it. There was something about it that helped me personally.
Yeah.
Those moments where there's a feedback loop that kind of reinforces the things that I'm doing, the work that I'm doing is providing value to at least one other person out there. Those moments, those reinforcement moments, are probably where I feel that the most. That's the point that goes, okay, I'm on the right track. I'm doing the right things. I may not get it right every single day, but there's at least something there that says that I've done something to help somebody else.
I had a ball a month and a half ago when we met at Cabin Coffee there in Mason City. And one of the things the biggest thing that stood out to me in our whole conversation, by the way, it was just so meaningful for me. It was a precious time, by the way. But you sharing with me about when you were working for the chamber and your different career, and then you had this opportunity to go down to Austin and do what you're doing now, and you thoroughly are enjoying that. That is your and that's your why. You love to coach. You love to help people. And when you're in your lane, It's almost like not even work, you know? And so, I mean, you are just blossoming. And so, and the other thing we have to remember, it's, and even, as we're an owner and you're an owner of your business too, we don't get anywhere because of just what we did. It's a lot of other people that have surrounded us and helped us to serve, love, care, nurture, enrich our lives to be where we're at. So again, that I'm going to circle right back around. If there's anything I think that people can get out of this is being grateful, because
Mm.
when you have a grateful soul, mind, and heart, you can't help but be happy. But then also, and I'll share one other thing, the lane, because when you and I were visiting, I mean, when you started talking about you going to Austin and working with your dad and setting up all these our businesses and doing what you're doing, man, you were just glowing. I mean, you had this beam of sunshine around your whole being, literally. I mean, you just had so much energy, and it was so fun to see. Okay, because I know you're truly happy. Okay, and that brings joy to others when they see other people happy. When we came up with this bash at the lake a few years ago, this dream that I had along with the chamber and Star, who's my business partner on Bash at the Lake, we put this thing together in 11 weeks. We raised over $120,000 and we brought these big Christian bands in. We had over 8,000 people. Well, you know how it was successful? Because everybody got in their lane and it was not work. And it was all volunteers. None of us got paid for it. But so that's the key is when you're in business and you're an owner, you have to help find these other people that are working for you to get in that right lane. Because if they're not in the right lane, their production capability is not going to be there. If you can get people in the right lanes, they will have this production capability that will go further than you could ever imagine. But we as owners, we have to effectively communicate that vision. And it has to be a vision that excites people, that people want to get on that bus, like John Gordon, right? Get on that bus and take that ride with you. And it's a roller coaster. It's up, down, all around. And sometimes you don't know how you're going to get to that goal, but you've had that vision, but it's going to be a roller coaster to get there. But you have other people to help you on it.
Mm-hmm. The thing that came to mind is we're going through this part of the conversation is leveraged impact. And as I think about it from specifically a business perspective, and you were mentioning moving down here to Austin, started to do things within the business coaching space, working with my dad, that sort of thing, and we were talking about a month and a half ago, and it's like even my career and kind of what I'm doing, I can see it starting to grow beyond that. But the lesson that I've learned in the last probably 4 to 6 weeks is the absolute power of the people around you and leveraging. I know we were talking about this a little bit before, but talents and gifts. I only have so many natural talents or so many gifts that I can use to provide impact to other people. But when bringing people together, in enrolling them in that shared long-term vision, and you can empower other people to use their talents and their gifts and their skill set to do some pretty amazing things. I think that's where we really can get excited about this. And you've seen it from moving from the impact of one Cabin Coffee location to 2 locations to franchising to multiple locations and having really scaled impact of what you and Angie started.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so cool to see that, because I can see, walking into any location that the culture, the presence, the vision that y'all have is spreading into everything that maybe you don't get to touch every day at this point. So as we kind of bring this for the audience and like different ways that they can think about impact, this leverage through other people and kind of continuing to build that skill set up of how do I connect with other people? How do I continue to bring others alongside me? And maybe at first it's 1 or 2 people, and then eventually it's 10 people, and they've got people around them that can exponentially grow through. You think of the nonprofit organizations, they're almost always built of committees. It's never one person. It's the ability for one person or a small group of people to impact so many additional people and bring them along for the ride. And so that's kind of what came into my head as we're talking about this is leveraged impact and growing through that as a part of kind of this journey, as you know, on this planet Earth, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it fun? I don't remember who said this, but it may have been, oh gosh, I can't remember who it was. But anyway, and I think about this all the time now. You know, when you go meet people, wherever you are, there's somebody smarter in the room than you. Somebody knows something more about one subject than you do. But isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good thing to think about too. I mean, you can be the best business person in the world. You could be, or in the room, you could be the wealthiest. You could be, you know, the most data driven. You could be the fittest. But maybe there's somebody in the room that has a more incredible family story than you do. Maybe somebody has, you know, these additional talents, these additional things that they know about, they've had lived experience in, and this ability to connect and share with one another. I mean, that to me is just distinctly human, and it's a superpower, I think, for the growth of everything that we do.
Yeah. 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 Uh, it's, you know, I think about this a lot, and I kind of have it down a little bit, you know, because so many times you think, you know, I ask people a lot, you know, why in the world are you even living here on this earth? And I know, and so people will ask me, I love this too, by the way. It's just great because it throws people off, but it creates great conversation. So, you know, most guys, you know, if they say, well, what do you do for a living? Well, you know, I'm co-founder of Cabin Coffee or this or that, or something, you know, that's what we identify with as guys, you know, and a lot of ladies too. But now when people, if I'm somewhere where people don't know me, they say, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm an encourager. And that's really what I am. Okay. And they've blown away. They say, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, I help people find their talents and gifts so they can add value not only to themselves, but others. Well, that just freaking blows them away. You know, they're not, you know, it may be some guy named Tom I'm just standing there visiting with. And then I ask them what they do, and 9 times out of 10, they tell me their career, what they're doing. And then I say, well, really, what sparks, what gives you a spark to where you have this burning desire in your soul to make a difference? And they go, wow, you know, because that's where we want to find people, you know. And I think about so much our culture is surrounded about. I'll give an example if I may. Can I give you an example about being in school real quick?
Please do.
Okay.
Please do.
So you know, you go through school and you learn English and math and you learn all these subjects, and then your parents are telling you, well, you know, you need to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, you know, and you need to go to school, you know, another 4 years or 6 years or 8 years. And that's not really your wheelhouse. You know, we're trained, our America is just trained to, you got to make a lot of money, you got to make a good living, instead of what's your passion? What do you really love to do? You know, and so because if you find what you really love to do, now you may have to sacrifice some for a long time, working something you don't to get to where you really want to be. But it's where's that sweet spot where you can really fully utilize those talents and gifts. Because when you're in that spot, it makes the world around you a better place. And I don't mean inwardly, I mean outwardly, because other people are getting the value out of that. You know, like my wife, she does cabin coffee because we make a living, and she's a great, great. In fact, that's really reason we're here. I'm just kind of the sidekick, man. But anyway, one of the things that she loves to do, she loves to quilt. Man, she quilts now. It's so therapeutic, and she gives these quilts out to every one of her team members, and does this. So in the significant value that adds to people with her making a quilt and giving that to somebody is beautiful. And that's the thing. We think we have to make this big impact on hundreds or thousands of people, but just in our store, it's that one person at a time that comes to that register. It's that one person, and we don't know what they're going through. And if we can just serve them and make them feel precious, and because they really are precious, they are a precious person. And if they can walk away from there with a smile on their face and a spring in their step, we've done our job. That's all it is. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. But we have to have that. I'm going to train. Maybe this is the word that I just keep thinking about. Well, I think about because we have these gratitude trees in our store now, where people can. There's leaves in there, and you can write something on that leaf what you're grateful for. And so when I walk in the store and I've been treated politely and have been seen, wow. That makes me feel so good. And it makes me want to whip around and make them feel even better.
Mm. I had, I don't know when I first heard this once upon a time or something like that, but just like a simple phrase that, today's a great day to wake up and make somebody else's day great, or today's a great day to serve somebody. Like not the world, not anything else, just
right.
Where's one act of kindness? Where's one opportunity throughout the day that I can do something that's going to make somebody else feel good?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's as simple as open the door for somebody. Sometimes it's, saying, hey, that shirt looks great on you today, or I love your shoes, or, it's just something really small can go such a long way. And if you flip that around, if you think about it from, when was the last time that somebody just came up to you and said, man, you look great today? Now you did that right when we got on the call today. It's like, wow, I feel really good. That's amazing. Right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't, when you think about it in reality, it doesn't happen really that frequently in most people's day-to-day lives. And, we all have this opportunity to really just make at least one other person feel great.
We do.
I think that's just such a great responsibility that we have as people of, I don't know, as humans. I think it's just a thing that we as humans get the responsibility to do.
Very well said. And relating to work, that's where we can use our talents and gifts the most, that we can add the most value to team members, to customers, and our vendors that we use. Our vendors are our partners too. They're just as important as our customers. There's and our team members. But I'll tell you what, one of the things that people should really know, and my mother shared this with me. She said, she worked for the Dallas Morning News. She was telecommunications for Dallas Morning News for a long time. And she said, Brad, she said, the people I work with are just as important as you at home. And I said, oh, really? She said, I want you to remember this, because she said, everybody's trying to keep a roof over their heads, food to eat, and clothes on their back. It doesn't matter how little of money you make or how much money you make. Son, people are always concerned about that. So when you're at work, you need to perform your best, because you're not only affecting keeping a roof over your family's heads, but you can either positively or negatively affect every person in that company. If you're doing your job well, you're serving well, you're helping everybody in that organization keep a roof over their heads, food to eat, and clothes on their back. If you are not doing that, and you're just thinking of yourself and poor what Brad can get, That's going to negatively affect everybody, and that's going to affect them, these other families, keeping a roof over their heads, food to eat, clothes on the back. So I want you to think about when you're at work, you look at that woman or that man and you're thinking, okay, he or she's got to keep a roof over their child's head, clothes on their back, and foods in their tummies. You always think about that. And if you think about that, you'll do a good job. So that's some great advice, I thought, from my mom.
That is really good advice. I want to go back to one additional thing that you had said earlier before I kind of bring us into a few closing questions. But you were talking about when you go and you talk to somebody and ask them what they do, what they do, and they inevitably will answer with their career title. It's the job that they do, this thing that has to just make money for them. They have to go to this, et cetera, et cetera. That is their identity in most cases, which is really intriguing. And, I'll speak to it from a business world, and I'm going to bring it into kind of career and work for those that maybe don't own a business yet. But one of the biggest lessons that I was taught probably about 4 years ago or now, sitting on a call with Brad Sugars, the founder of the Action Coach franchise. And he was asking some question around, Pat, like what would I go do if all of a sudden I had, time and money and that sort of thing, and I was going to grab a bunch of my friends, like what would I go do? And I sat there and I'm like, I have no idea. I had never thought about, this world beyond working and work or business and things like that. And then he said something that was very profound or has really stuck with me. He said, business is the vehicle that gives you the life that you want. It's not about the business itself. It's about the life that you're going to live, which I think in my world translates to the other people that we have, the relations that we have, everything else around that. But the business is just a vehicle for that. So I want to bring this back to, why I brought this up. But, if you're someone that's in a career or you're working every single day and you're thinking about these types of things, you're like, man, I have to go to work and I have to do this. And just some of those questions that you asked that barista, what if we thought about it as career or your work or your job is just a vehicle to use your talents and your gifts? How can you use those to the best of your ability? Because when you shift that mindset, shift that frame, imagine what you can accomplish.
That is good, Tanner. That is great.
So let's bring this back to the business world for a second.
Sure.
Because I've got a few kind of what we call rapid fire questions as we start to kind of bring these conversations to a close. And I think these will be kind of fun, specifically on the back of the conversation we've had so far today. But we'll start with books.
Okay.
And I'm going to go business books for a second. But if you think back on some of the best books that you've read, is there one or two? I won't necessarily pigeonhole it down into one specific book, but is there a business book that stands out to you that has had probably the biggest impact in how you come across as a business leader today?
Yeah, it's so easy for me. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I read that in 93. I still have the book right there and my workbook with it. And it was so, so, so helpful for me, as not only as a business person, but personally too. Yeah. I'm the kind of person where, you do the disc thing, I'm the same at work as I am at home. I'm not any different. A lot of, like my wife's different. My wife's completely different at business than she is at home, but I am completely the same. What you see at work is what you see at home and vice versa. So, but yeah, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I'm reading. Okay, and this is a great thing too. Let me get it. Hang on, just a minute. Bear with me. I'm reading this book right now. Finish Strong. It's a great book. It's about what I can do these last few years to really be able to elevate Cabin Coffee to a point to where when somebody else takes over, our son's doing that right now. We position the company stronger than we ever have when Angie and I part ways.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
The next question I have for you, I'm going to shift up a little bit.
Okay.
It's originally kind of framed as hires, but I want to shift it and say one relationship.
Okay.
So I want you to think to a little bit broader than just one hire that maybe you've made along the way, but what's one relationship that has changed everything or has had the largest impact in your life and how you come across as a leader today?
Okay. 1977, 11th grade year, Houston, Texas. By far, this is the best thing I ever learned. It's about business, and it's about life. I walk in one day, Mr. Viola. He was an awesome teacher, and I walked in there one day, and I looked pretty spent. I had in my first class. He said, "What's going on today, Brad? You look kind of, anxious." And I said, Mr. Viola, fighting the traffic to school. And then I worked half a day and went to school half a day my 11th and 12th grade year. And I have to fight the traffic and, school. I really don't like school that much, and homework. I'm not good at homework, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me really seriously. And he said, "Brad, do you want to live a fruitful life?" And I said, "Well, of course I do, Mr. Viola." He said, "I tell you what, you're telling me all this that you're sharing with me is all about yourself. You get up tomorrow morning and you think about how many smiles you can put on people's faces. And when you walk through this school, you see a teacher, you say hi to that teacher." I said, "Well, Mr. Viola, who am I?" Now, when I went to school there were 2,700 kids in this high school. And it was only 10th grade to 12th grade, and there were probably 4 or 5 kids a day moving to this school. It was the school district in Houston was just a lot of new kids, people moving in from all over the country, and kind of like what you're experiencing in Austin. Okay, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, he said, "You get up tomorrow morning, and you see how many smiles you can put on people's faces. You say hi to the teachers." Who am I to say hi to a teacher, Mr. Viola? He said, "You don't know what they're going through. And when you go to work today, you tell your boss how much you appreciate that work." And so what he was telling me was it's not ever about me. So the sooner you learn that it's never about you, that it's about what you can do to love, serve, care, nurture, and enrich other people's lives through work, through community, through volunteering, whatever that may be, you will live a fruitful life. And it has paid off.
What an incredible lesson to learn at that stage in life. I mean, how many kids today have whether it's a mentor or somebody in their life like that can give that type of a lesson or that type of advice? That's really incredible.
It really is. You think about, again, all the subjects you learn in school, but that took a precedence. And then, so if I may, just real quick, may I have just one more little thing to dovetail off of that?
Please.
Okay. So when COVID hit, a lot of our stores, in Minnesota especially, they shut down the restaurants. And so all we had was, thank goodness we had the drive-thrus. That saved our Minnesota stores. Iowa kept open, most of our other stores, and I was so grateful for that. But then everybody was so confined. And I remembered that re-entered my whole being, what Mr. Viola shared with me. Because now, did I take his advice all the time? No, I did not. I'm still working on it. Still work in progress. But so what I do every morning, the first thing I do, because COVID hit and people were feeling isolated, I get out a note and I write a note to somebody. Okay? I have this list right in my drawer of all the friends and family. And every morning, and I get excited about this, I look here and I find somebody I can write a note to. I've written a son to your dad. I owe you one, brother. And but anyway, but what that does, I remember what Mr. Viola said, and I don't ever write anything about me. It's not about me. It's about pouring into them, and hoping that somewhere or another, letting them know how much I value our friendship, and just give them some accolades about their talents and gifts to give them a pick me up. So I do that every morning. It's the first thing I do, brother, when I walk right in here, before I do anything else. And so it's hard to do sometimes, because sometimes you just don't know what in the world to write. But it makes you think. But see, the trick is it gets out of you. You're not thinking of yourself. You're thinking of others. And that puts you in a great mindset to start the day. That works for me.
I don't know if you're able to see and like read my notes here, because literally my next question was going to be, what's something that you do for yourself to make you a better leader?
Oh, okay.
Which is almost perfect to what you just shared with us. Yeah. Is there anything you want to add on to that? Whether it's not necessarily something that you're doing for others, but is there anything that you do for yourself to keep you in a spot that allows you to continue to pour into others?
That's a great question.
We talk about if your cup's not full, it's very difficult to then pour into other people. What do you do for yourself?
That's a great question. I want to know that from you too, after I answer. Will you share with me yours?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. It's all, for me, it's all full circle. Okay. I have to exercise. I've been blessed with a lot of energy. I'm 64 years old, but I still, I require to expel energy for me to be calm, cool, and collective. So I exercise almost every day. That is big therapy for me. And when I challenge myself, and it's not just the motivation, really more it's the discipline of doing it every day. Okay. Now I may miss a Sunday or two, but I typically work out at least 6 days a week. Okay. And I push myself a little bit every time, because here's what I think about. If I push myself and do just a little bit more, then I know it's reciprocal for when I'm coming to work. I'm not going to be lazy at work. I'm going to do a little bit more at work. I'm going to do a little bit more for my lovely wife. I'm going to do a little bit more for my family and friends. It all is reciprocal. So taking care of myself physically is helps keep me more. I do it more for my emotional state than my physical state. And so for people, I have this nonprofit, and the people in my nonprofit and my business, they pour into me. But I just say, taking care of yourself. Your health is your wealth. Your health is your wealth. You don't have your health, you don't have diddly squat. All right, how about you?
Isn't that the truth?
Back at you.
Exercise is definitely on the list for me. I mean, it's one of those areas that I, for years now, I mean, I've got to do something every day. Now, it doesn't have to be like a full workout, but it's got to be some level of exercise. Yes, and I find that sometimes it's a really hard workout to just completely exhaust everything, so I can't focus on anything else. And that's a great way to just kind of replenish or create space in my mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, and I found this a lot more probably in the last year, taking the time to just go for a walk. I don't care if it's on the treadmill, it's outside. Outside's great if I can do it. Sometimes here in the Texas heat, that doesn't sound like that much fun. But what I find happens that if I can truly push notifications, if I can push other things away, and I can just be in a state where my body's moving, my brain actually starts to get a little bit more creative. And when I get into a creative space, which is unusual for me because I'm definitely a very task driven numbers type of a person. Like getting into a creative mode has been something that's been more of a challenge for me than maybe for some others.
Uh-huh.
But when I get into that and I can think bigger vision, I can think, start solving problems in a different way. That for me, like when I get into that mode, it is fun. It fills me up because it allows me to think about how do I put these pieces together that have all been there, whether they're individuals, they're people, they're projects that we have in front of us. It's getting into that mode is a big piece for me to start kind of filling my own cup back up. Um, but movement, I mean, it's really aligned with what you just shared. I mean, it is that physical activity piece, just getting the body and the mind connected together is a huge piece. And then ideally finding, some time to hang around people that I genuinely enjoy.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's just being here at home and with the wife and kids. Sometimes it's, being at some of these, whether it's a networking event or it's I volunteer with the Round Rock Chamber, and there's a lot of really great people in that community that when I get a chance to actually connect with them and just hang out for a minute or two, that can have, a lot of positive impact. When we sat down, a month and a half ago and just, spent an hour and a half or whatever it was and just having conversations like this one, that's probably my long-winded answer to that question. It depends on the day, but there's movement, people, and allowing some kind of creative space are probably the three pillars of that for me.
So you were saying you're more creative when you're moving. Is it
Yes.
and think is it so like what is it in your mind creative that you're thinking about a lot when you're moving and you're exercising? What's your mind on a lot of?
Uh, right now, it's I'm going to call it creative solutions to future problems that haven't come up yet.
Okay.
I spend a lot of time thinking about what's going to be the impact of AI. How can I start leveraging it? What types of tools can I use? How does that impact my team? How do I leverage the team? What are those types of things? Which anymore. So like this is the coolest thing for me from a guy who's like super data driven and everything
Okay.
else, and unlike my son who's super creative and can draw anything, build anything, like he's just absolutely amazing. Um, this whole AI world is allowing people like me that are a lot more data driven to create things we've never created before. And I get the ability to go, I see something that can be a problem that can be solved. I've got an idea of kind of how that's going to work. And now there's these tools that allow me to create by just thinking about it. And that to me is the coolest thing in the world. So it's right now, it's a lot on that. Now, you asked me the same question 6 months ago. It's probably a little bit different, but right now, that's where a lot of my headspace goes is how do we integrate these things that are just accelerating what I think is going to be a pretty profound and amazing thing. I know there's a lot of people that are like, there's a lot of negative things to be worried about, especially with AI, but I think it's going to force us to spend more time with people. I think it's going to be, it's going to force more authenticity. We're going to get back to spending time in groups, one-to-one again, and kind of get rid of all the tedious stuff. And it's really cool to see how that can impact, going back to leveraged impact. How can we create more value for more people at a greater rate than we ever have in the past?
So okay, so for the people that kind of struggle with exercising, okay, so you're sharing with me all these things you're thinking about when you're exercising, right? So when you're thinking about those things, what do you notice about your body when you're thinking about those things when you're exercising?
It's a great question. I hadn't thought about that before. I think probably the biggest piece would be energy, focus, and just like revitalization. Um, Now, the caveat is, and this will be very different for each person, but
Okay.
for me, if I'm doing heavy strength training type stuff, it's very difficult for me to think about these things and be creative. Like I got to be super focused on that. But if
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing more cardio based stuff or walking or running, light running, something else like that,
Yeah,
that's where this stuff really comes
sure.
in. But how I feel afterwards is probably the key point. I feel more rejuvenated. I feel clearer because my brain has been working as well. It's like, yes, I've exhausted. I've got kind of all the excess energy out of my body and it's ready to go and the blood's pumping, but my brain is already on to the next thing
Mm-hmm.
in a positive way. Like it's
Yeah,
connecting dots
yeah,
faster. Like that's more or less kind of what I tend to find.
yeah. So see, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when I'm doing those aerobics like that too, not necessarily weights, you have to focus, but I've and I heard it from you. You almost have more energy. It propels you even more to run a little faster or walk a little faster because you're not. Because if I think about the dreadfulness of doing that, I'm not going to want to do it, right? But when I'm thinking of other things when I'm exercising, you're you're accomplishing really great goals mentally,
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to do whatever you can to add value to your business or your life, and then also physically, you're improving your physical health. So it works
Yeah.
hand in hand. So for those folks that struggle with exercise, try and think of some fruitful things in your head. You can't on strength training because you got to pay attention because you could get hurt. But those aerobic kind of exercises, wow, you can really go to town. When you're thinking,
Yeah.
I notice this too, when I'm like on the stationary bike or on my bike, if I'm thinking of something negative, I'm slowing down. But if I'm thinking of something positive and thinking, good things, I have more energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's a fun note
Okay.
for anybody that's out there. So I'm gonna pull in some of the stuff that I've been testing with AI. But here's a fun unlock. And for anyone that's like, I don't know if I want to go exercise, things like that, start with walking. Like really and truly, it is an amazing form of exercise. Just start with that. It's the easiest thing to do. You can just throw on some shoes, walk outside. But download any of the chat tools today, whether it's ChatGPT, it's Gemini, it's Claude. Pick one. Doesn't matter. Start with a free account. Like you don't have to pay for this stuff yet. But all three of these have a voice tool on it where you can just talk with it. Go on a walk and just have a conversation with it. Have a conversation with it on something that you're thinking about, something, whether it's in your career, it's in your personal life, it's in business, whatever it is, and just be like, hey, I'm thinking about this problem. And I just want you to ask me a couple of questions so I can think about this a little bit deeper. Like you get into that and then you're also walking and things like that. You may go, I went to walk for 15 minutes, but I'm still here 30 minutes later, still getting exercise in because I'm just having such a great conversation, really thinking about things that are in my head with a tool that can genuinely ask me the next question that I really need to be asked all in real time. It is insane.
I'm going to do that.
Oh yeah, there's some really cool stuff, but you want to make that stuff easier in terms of just getting into exercise and building those habits. That it's an incredible way to do that.
That is a huge nugget for your audience. Great job sharing that.
Well, thank you. All right, we're gonna bring this back with one final kind of question to cap us off, and
Okay.
yeah, this is just a fun question overall, and it might take you a second to think about it, but if you could have coffee with anyone, living or dead, who would you choose and why?
Hmm. I would think Billy Graham. And the reason he was just such an amazing person, he brought so many people together to have a purpose. And, I'm a faithful person, I believe in Christ. And so just the way he brought people together to bring hope and faith and love to millions of people around the world, and he mentored so many presidents and leaders of other countries, and so I would just love. In fact, I'm getting chills thinking about it right now. I think he was just excellent communicator.
Hmm.
How about you? Can I ask that about
I,
you?
I I had a feeling you were going to turn that one around and ask me. I when I think about that type of question, few things go through my mind. The first one is that going back to some things we've talked about already in this conversation, but gratitude, because I've had kind of some pretty amazing opportunities to have some people in my life that I could go have coffee with them tomorrow, or have had coffee with them, or have standing meetings with them, and they're incredibly successful people, whether it's financially, business wise, or just community success. So I'm going to leave those off the table for a moment,
Okay.
and I tend to still go very practical, meaning that the answer that I'm going to give, I think of it as this would be someone that not only would I choose because they're a great person, but I maybe putting it out there as aspirational that one day maybe I can actually have that conversation, which narrows it down to somebody that's living rather than dead. Um, right now, my answer would actually be Stephen Bartlett of Diary of CEO. I've been following a lot of his work for a while. Um, and I think it would be absolutely incredible to just have a conversation with him about some of the things that he's accomplished, his career, what he's done with the podcast, and some of the interactions that he's had with some pretty absolutely incredible people all across the world. Um, that would be a pretty fun coffee meeting to have. It's almost like you've got the knowledge of it's cheating in a way, like having a conversation with somebody who's had conversations with other people, so I can kind of pull all the information into one.
Yeah.
But that currently would be my
So,
answer.
what's really like one thing that really intrigues you about him that makes you really want to meet him and have a cup of coffee? Is there one really thing that,
To me, he comes across as incredibly transparent and authentic, in that whether this is true or not, this is my perception. If I were to ask him a question, I'd likely get a true answer.
yeah,
And I think that's important if you're going to sit down and
yeah,
have a chat with someone.
yeah. And you know what? That's why you're so attractive too. You're very authentic. You said that about him. That's that again. All of us need to be just who we are because we're okay the way we're made.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, I want to say thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure as always, and hopefully we'll come back. And I know there's like 100 different things we could have conversations on. So thank you so much for taking the time. This has just been a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. My pleasure, sir. Have a great day.